Welcome back. In this lecture, we'll look at filling missing data. We'll see methods to fill no values or any missing data. So in the previous lecture, we created two data frames, data frame and data frame 1. Let's call data frame 1 also. Okay, let's create some more. So data frame 1 has two missing values here, no values. Let's introduce some more missing data or no values in the other columns, column 2 and 3, for instance. So we saw that we can do that by calling data frame 1 that ILAC, and then we can choose, let's say, 4 rows, index 0 to 3, and then 4 columns, let's say index 1, and then we can set that to be equal to np.nan. That will introduce missing data in our data frame 1. Data frame 1, if we call it now, we have few more missing data in our column 2, and let's introduce some more missing data in column 3. So data frame 1 that ILAC, let's introduce missing data, index 0 to 2 on our rows, and then column at index 0, 1, 2, and we'll set that to be equal to np.nan. Let's call our data frame 1 object. Good, now we have missing data in column 1, 2, and 3. So we look at the fill NA method to fill out this missing data. So how can we do that? There are certain methods that we can do that. Let me show you the first one. So we simply call our data frame object and then call the fill NA method on it. And then we can pass, there's an argument called method, and that will help us to fill any of this missing data with values. So this method accepts arguments. This argument method accepts one is pad, so we can set method to be equal to pad or forward fill or backward fill. Pad, forward fill, or backward fill. So let's look at an example of pad first. So what this will do is fill the NA with the previous value. For instance, here in column 1, we have no value or missing data under index D. So with the pad method, this will be filled with this value, 1.28. Okay, let's run it and see. So here we see that column 1 under index D is filled with the previous value, which is 1.28. So that's what pad does. And now let's look at the backward fill. Backward basically means it will fill the missing data with the value before it. So for instance, here column 2 at index C has no data. Index D has this value. So by passing method as backward fill, it will fill this no value with 0.005, and it will fill this missing data in our column 3 at index B with the value before it, which is negative 1.7. Let's look at that. So data frame 1 that fill NA, and then for method we'll use backward fill, B fill. So if we run this, we see that here at C it's filled by 0.05. So column 2 at index C is filled with 0.005, and all the remaining values above this value, initially they were no value or missing data, but because we are using this backward fill, all of those are filled with the value before them, which is 0.0057. Similarly, the values for column 3 under index A and B are filled with negative 1.709. So in this case, it filled all the no values here. But if we want to fill only one of the rows with the using the backward fill method, we can do that. And we can pass another argument called limit. By passing that limit argument, we can set or we can control how many rows can be filled with the previous data or value. So we can say data frame 1. Let's call our data frame 1 object. Okay, now we will fill only this value. Using the backward fill, what we will do is fill this value, using this value, fill this missing data, using this value, and finally we'll fill this missing data under column 3 using the value negative 1.709. Let's do that. So data frame 1 that fill NA, and then for method we'll use backward fill, and then we'll pass a second parameter or argument called limit, and then we'll set our limit to 1, meaning fill only one missing data. So if we run this, we see that only one of the missing data will be filled, which is column 1 under E, column 2 under C, that's what we see here, column 2 under C, and finally column 3 under B. That's limiting to 1. And if we limit this backward fill to 2, if we set the limit to 2, in this case it will fill all the missing values, all the missing data in column 1 and column 3, right? Whereas in column 2 it will fill these two missing values at index B and C. Let's run it. So only one missing data is left. So this is how we can control what to fill by passing the limit argument. And we can use the limit argument with a forward fill also. So let's look at a forward fill example. So data frame 1 that fill NA, and the method, let's pass forward fill. So in forward fill, it looks at the value before it. Since there is no value before it for columns 2 and 3, we'll still have those no values. Whereas in the first column, where is our data frame 1, we have two no values, and those are filled with this value before it, which is 1.28, and it filled both of the missing data. Both of them are filled with 1.28 now, and we can limit that by passing the limit argument. So if we only want one of the missing data to be filled, we can pass limit and set it to be equal to 1. Now only the first missing data is filled. So this is how we can use the fill NA method, and as we saw, we can pass the method argument, and then we can set that to be equal to forward fill, backward fill, or simply pad, and we can use the optional second parameter called limit to limit the number of missing data that we want to fill. So both of this method and limit arguments are optional. Another thing we could have done is just say, let's say data frame 1 that fill NA, and we can fill all the missing data with a scalar value, with a certain number. Let's say if we want to fill all the missing data with 100, for instance, we can do that. So all the missing data, or all the NaNs, will have a value of 100 now. We can also do that. And if we want some other value instead of this constant, we can also do it. Instead of this scalar value, we can also do that. Sometimes you'll see this missing data or no values filled with the mean of our data frame. We can also do that. Let's first calculate the mean of our data frame 1 object. So we'll call the mean method on it. We have this mean values for each of our columns. What we will do next is fill the missing data with the mean of our data frame. So we have our data frame 1 that we'll call the fill NA method on it, and then we'll pass our data frame 1's mean. So this will fill out all the missing values in each column with the respective means. So column 1 has a mean value of negative 0.029. So any missing data in column 1 will have that value. That's what we see here, negative 0.29 here. And then similarly, column 2 has a mean of 0.24. So those were the missing values. Now they have a mean value, the mean value of 0.248. And similarly, column 3 has a mean value of negative 1.6. So now our missing data has that mean value. So that's also another practice. And if we can also restrict this filling to certain columns, we can do that by indexing the columns once we apply the mean method. Let me show you what I mean. We can also say we have our data frame 1, then we'll call the fill NA method, then we'll fill it by calculating our data frame's mean, and then we only want to apply this to, let's say, columns, let's say 1 and 2, for instance. We can say column 1 and then column 2. So let's run this. So now we don't see any missing data or no values in the first two columns, whereas column 3 still has missing data. That's because we are restricting this fill NA method to the first two columns. And we could apply this only to column 3 if we want. So we can say data frame 1 dot fill NA, data frame 1 dot min, and then just index column 3. Now column 3 doesn't have any missing data. Great. To summarize what we saw in this lecture, we saw that we can use the fill NA method to fill any missing data or no values in our data frame. We saw that we can pass optional parameters called method and limit, and we can pass, for method we can set that to be equal to forward fill, backward fill, or pad, and we can limit the number of rows that we can fill the no values with. If we use the backward fill, it will use the value after it, whereas the forward fill will fill no values by considering values before that.